He's from Pearson, well, or Pearson is sponsoring him. We're gonna go with every accent. Oh, this is just for me. Every accent tells a story. Rethinking correction in ELT. In English language classrooms, well-intentioned correction can sometimes have unintended consequences. This presentation explores how overcorrection and rigid adherence to a single standard accent risk demotivating learners and limiting their communicative growth. Drawing on classroom experiences and current research, the presentation highlights how validating diverse accents, thank you very much for that, and communicative styles better prepares students for real-world use of English as a lingua franca, particularly in intercultural contexts where intelligibility matters more than conformity. Participants will consider practical strategies to balance correction with encouragement, nurture learner confidence, and embrace the rich variety of English that reflects today's globalized world. Now talking about our presenter, Chase Harrison, originally from Florida in the United States. He earned his bachelor's degree from St. Petersburg College and his master's from the University of West Florida, where he is currently completing an educational doctorate in instructional and performance technology. His journey in education began as a United States Peace Corps environmental conservation educator in Panama, an experience that sparked his passion for teaching and cross-cultural communication. Over the past 8 years, he has taught students from diverse backgrounds in subjects ranging from English as a foreign language to social studies, math, and reading, as well as serving as a test proctor for the United States Embassy in Colombia. Today, he teaches English language arts to 8th and 9th graders at a private school in Bogota, while completing his doctoral dissertation which focuses on improving communication between schools and their alumni communities. In addition to his classroom work, he has published in Innovations in Science Teacher Education in July 2025. His teaching and research reflect a commitment to helping students see English not only as an academic subject, but also as a global tool for connection, collaboration, and opportunity. So let's give a big round of applause for Chase.
Good morning. How's everyone doing? Are you all from Medellin? Show of hands. Who lives in Medellin? Okay, so for you, this is a normal trip. For me, I'm super excited to be with you all. I live in Bogota, so this is my first time getting to be here and have a bandeja paisa that is authentic and real. I want to thank my introducer because, wow, I sound impressive. Oh, thank you. So today I am going to be covering how every accent tells a story and how we need to reevaluate how we give corrections to our students. So as I said, I've been here in Colombia now for 7 years, and I know that a lot of times people see a foreigner and they come in and they get that kind of skeptic look about their presence and if they know what they're talking about. So I want to give a little caveat that as she said, my specialty is instructional and performance technology. I am not a linguist, but what I do is I look at problems, I identify them, and then I give a solution based on whatever resources are available to correct that issue. So today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we innovate using the HPT model, the Human Performance Technology model, and then how I'm going to use that to show you how we can better improve correction in the classroom. But before I do that, innovation often fails. Why do you think innovations fail? You can think to yourself. If you have something you want to shout out, you can shout out. We're not a big group. Afraid of change? Okay, valid. Anybody else have an idea?
Maybe because it's not always accessible for everyone.
Accessibility. Very good. Any other thoughts?
Habits. We usually teach the way we were taught many times, and we kind of like divert to that default state.
Right. Very good. We stick to what we know. We stick to a traditional method. Very good. Well, to complement the three answers I just got, another reason why innovation fails is because the innovation is put in place to treat the symptom and not to treat the cause. When we have a cavity in our mouth, we go to the dentist. The dentist puts a filling. We've treated the symptom. But if the dentist doesn't tell the teacher, or the teacher doesn't tell the patient to brush their teeth, what's going to happen again? Another cavity. So we need to always look at how innovations can match the root cause of the issue that they are trying to address. Which brings me to my holy grail, the HPT model. Now it's big, it's scary, and I'm not going to bore you with all of the intricacies. I just wanted to give you all a foundation of how I go about doing my research and how I go about investigating solutions to problems of practice in education. So we have to identify what the ideal state is, what is the expectation. Then we look at what's happening right now, the reality. We identify the gap, and then we propose solutions that are, I believe you said, that match the resources that are available to us, and then try to find a way to keep that innovation sustainable. So, the innovation goal. What's expected of teachers and students in English language education? And again, I'll take answers. I like talking to you people. What's expected of us and what's expected of our students?
Well, I think I speak for all of us that somehow we, the professors or the teaching guild, we're thought to be a know-it-all like person. And we are thought of as Wikipedias when we are not. It doesn't matter how biased it might be, but yeah, that is one thing we are recognized for.
Valid, okay. Anybody else have a thought?
I think it is expected of teachers so we have the capability of adapting to changes, especially when it comes to speaking about innovation schools, and expected of students that they actually get engaged by the different tools and processes that are being applied in these processes of innovation at school. So I think adaptability and engagement are two parts or two things that are expected of us.
For sure. How many of you thought you had a nice, calm day at work, and then your director calls you and goes, guess what? You have a reemplazo. You have to go run and cover somebody else's class. Adaptability is definitely a requirement. So to complement what you all said, in the English language context, we want intelligibility when they're speaking. Ideally, we want our students to achieve typically a B2 or a C1 on international language exams. Better if that international language exam comes from Pearson. Thank you. And of course, we want them to enjoy being with us. We want them to enjoy the course. We want them to be having fun, to be learning, because this obviously leads to recommendations, and education, whether you like it or not, is a business, and we have to keep the doors open with matriculation. So, what are our current barriers to innovation? And I have a little asterisk here to take this as a grain of thought because my scope is pretty narrow, but it's still true. Number one, Latin America has English proficiency challenges, and unfortunately, my querido Colombia is below global standards. And might not be the case in Colombo Americano, but typically English is not taught as a lengua franca, especially in international schools that pride themselves on using a British curriculum or a North American curriculum. We're not giving the students the perspective of English language as a globalized language. So as we can see here from the English First English Proficiency Index, which is a score from 400 to 700, we can see that the Netherlands is doing amazing. God bless them. But in Latin America, our scores are slightly lower. Argentina is taking the lead with a score of 576, but then we have Colombia down here at 489. So we gotta work on that, yeah? Another issue that I have observed in my 7 years of working at various institutions across Bogota is there seems to be a tendency to overcorrect our students. Students will receive papers back from their teachers like this, and that is a lot of information to take in. How many of you, when you were learning English, if English is not your first language, felt completely bamboozled and overwhelmed by the feedback you got from your teachers? Hands up. Oh, come on, we're friends, let's be honest. Yeah, exactly. I'll never forget when I was learning Spanish in university, I had a wonderful teacher, ironically from Argentina, and she let me talk. She let me talk and talk and talk, mistakes and everything. She never stopped me. I was like, yes, I can speak Spanish. And then she went away, and I got a replacement teacher, and she stopped me every time I made the tiniest mistake. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to learn this language anymore. So overcorrection does have a tendency to demotivate our students, which I will get into a little bit more here in a second. So what are the current gaps in Colombia between what should be our B2, C1 expectation, that they enjoy their course, and the reality, what is, of having below acceptable language scores and overcorrection? Oh, I pressed the wrong button. So, where innovation gets lost, we're gonna mind the gap, as we say. How many of you actually study linguistics? Show of hands again. Only 5? Wow, 6? God bless you. I love you all so much. You are the best. But sometimes you make me so nervous. And you also make your students nervous because, again, in my anecdotal observations, linguists tend to have this assumption that everyone is as passionate about language learning as they are. And I'm right there with you. I love it too. But a majority of our students, 9 times out of 10, are just not as enthused. They're there because their parents put them there. They're there because they feel obligated for career advancement, whatever the case may be. So we have to keep that in mind. Also, teachers have a tendency to go a little authoritative and be the be-all, end-all for language learning. This is how I learned, as we said before, so you're going to learn that way too, and that might not necessarily fit the student's needs. And the most important part, which is what I'm talking about today, the information overload, where accent modification and overcorrection can be a major source of the motivation for our students. Also, from my perspective again, A lot of teachers are sometimes fearful to try something new because in Colombia we have temporary contracts. If I try something out of the ordinary, maybe they're not going to renew my contract. And so out of fear, we stick to the status quo. Out of fear, we don't deviate from what we know and how we best perform, and we stick to, what has been told always works. And then sometimes teaching doesn't reflect best practices. Ironically, here I am a foreigner talking to you all, but schools will send in foreigners who don't have a context for the classroom within Colombia, give you tips and tricks for your Colombian students that may work in Japan, they may work in Russia, but might not necessarily work here. And yes, I see heads moving, I feel you, I've been in those meetings, and I'm like, what is this guy talking about? So, why is overcorrection such a problem when we're trying to innovate? You all have been learning from yesterday and today all of these really great resources to improve your didactic approaches in the classroom, how to use AI, gamification, flipped learning, thinking classroom. I think I'm missing a few, the posters in my brain, but I can't recall all of them. It stalls because overcorrection makes students self-conscious, which leads to silence. If I feel like everything that's coming out of my mouth is going to be judged, then all of a sudden, I'm quiet. Also, and this is a huge issue for me, and it hurts my heart every time I hear a parent say it to me, I want my student, I want my son, I want my daughter to sound like you. Why? I mean, I have a great voice, but why? Your accent is your identity, your accent is your culture, and for my linguists who are currently judging me for talking about accent, I know accent is a feature of dialect, but for the sake of today's presentation, let's treat accent as a separate entity, yeah? And because English is a lingua franca, it is a globalized language. There is not one correct way to say a word. There are many. I am from the US, so when I count, I go 1, 2, 3. But if you go to Ireland, which I'm not going to do that accent because that would be cultural appropriation, they say 1, 2, 3. Which one's right? Hey. That's right. So, we need to make sure that while we're innovating, while we're applying gamification, while we're applying flipped classrooms, that we also validate people's identities when they're speaking. Because accent, like I said before, represents culture and identity. Every time a student has come to me and said, no, I don't talk like I should. I don't, teacher, like, stop. I understand you. If I understand you and you understand me, we have achieved the goal of communication and of speaking a language. Your voice is your power. Which is why intelligibility is so much more important than imitation. If you can sound like a native, and I hate using that word, but if you can sound like a native, great, I congratulate you. But that's not the story for everybody. What matters most important in a globalized language like English is that I can understand the words that you are speaking to me. So while we're innovating, we need to recall and always have in the back of our minds that we need to respect their identity while making perhaps 1 or 2 modifications to clarity. Because sometimes, yes, accent can be a blocker to the message being communicated correctly, but by and large, typically we can understand somebody regardless of accent. So, how do we innovate our corrective practices? Well, number 1, we only correct when the error blocks the meaning. If I understood you, I'm going to let you go. If you said something and maybe you didn't use an auxiliary word or you didn't use the right prefix or suffix, but I understood your message, I'm going to let you go for the moment. Perhaps that's not the focus of the lesson I'm giving, so for the time being, we're just going to let that mistake exist in the world. If you're going to correct, you're going to delay correction until after communication ends. If you are somebody who stops your students mid-sentence, please stop. You're hurting them. We need to make sure that we let them get the full message out. Sometimes students even have the ability to auto-correct, and so your correction might be premature. And also, we need to separate, oh, that's unfortunate that I did that. It needs to separate grammar from pronunciation. This is more on the student side than our side, but students tend to conflate grammar with pronunciation in the sense that they think that if their pronunciation is incorrect, they think their grammar is incorrect, and that's often not the case. It's just you phrased the sentence correct, subject, verb, object, but perhaps the pronunciation was a little off. But wait, there's more. Use clarification requests instead of direct correction. Every day in my classroom, a student who wants to escape for 5 or 10 minutes because I'm just too much will go, "Teacher, can I recharge my bottle?" I go, "Yes, you can recharge your bottle, but you might get electrocuted." I go, "Oh, can I refill my water bottle?" Yes, yes you can. And thank you for, not mixing electricity with water. Also, something that I had a teacher from Japan, and he did the most phenomenal thing with all of his students. And I think it was to his benefit because he also had English as a second language. Repeat what was said to confirm understanding with embedded questions. So if a student says to me, for example, I need to go to the infirmary. I go, "Oh, okay. So you need to go to the infirmary. For what reason?" I confirm if the pronunciation maybe didn't hit my ear the right way, what they said, and then I get additional information to confirm that I heard it correctly. And something that I do, even as the native in the classroom, is I model communication with non-native accents. I specifically look for videos of Colombian people speaking in English. I specifically look for videos of people in China speaking in English, because again, as a global language, we need to be exposing them to more than just British and North American accents. We need to make sure that they can understand every single person who speaks in English. Super important, and I can't tell you, again, in my 7 years of being in Colombia, how many times I've walked into a classroom and the only audio and video content that students receive is British and American. We need to give them a little bit more diversity. And the most important innovation is be your student's cheerleader. I don't know the economic situations of your students or their travel experiences, but for a majority of our students that we have, you might be the only person that they speak English to. They go home, nobody at home speaks English. Their friends maybe don't want to speak in English, yet they do. They need you to be the person that champions their journey in language acquisition. Multiple studies, and I have them cited below, have shown that teachers are the solitary motivator and demotivator of language acquisition. So if you are hard on them, we're not giving them what they need. They need somebody that they feel is in their corner, that is going to support them, mistakes and all. And just so you all know, because I did use some artificial intelligence to make these images, I said, make an image of a supportive teacher, and it gave me this. And I said, that's nice, but can you make it Colombian? And it gave me that. I don't know, his hand made me feel uncomfortable, so I kept the other one. Now, developing innovations. We are all on the precipice of new technology. I'm sure you heard about this ad nauseum yesterday, but it bears repeating. AI is a great way for students to practice speaking without being judged. The robot, the computer, the whatever you want to call it. Some people are actually gendering AI now and calling it he or she. Whatever you want to refer to it as. It is a great way to practice speaking in a way that is not going to be discriminate towards the students. Prior to AI, I used to just use voice to text. I'm an Android, and so I will go on my Google keyboard, I will press the microphone, and I will speak into it, and if the text generates the way I said it, then guess what? I said it correctly. So let's play with my little GPT real quick, if I can get this thing to open. Okay, where are you at? 1 second. Hola GPT, ¿cómo estás?
Hola, estoy muy bien. Gracias por preguntar. ¿Cómo estás tú?
Pues yo estoy bien, pero mira, nosotros tenemos el mismo acento, ¿no?
Sí, de hecho suena como que coincidimos bastante en el acento, así que estamos en sintonía. Es genial.
Pero ChatGPT, tengo una duda, es que mi acento es muy feo, no me gusta cómo hablo.
Bueno, yo te diría que no te preocupes por eso en absoluto. Los acentos son parte de nuestra identidad y realmente no hay acentos feos, solo diferentes. Así que ten confianza, porque tu manera de hablar es tan valiosa como cualquier otra.
Oh, muchas gracias, ChatGPT. No me importa qué dice Sarah Connor, yo creo que tú eres bueno.
Me alegra escuchar eso. Y bueno, aquí estoy para ayudarte en lo que necesites, sin importar lo que diga Sarah Connor.
Bueno, so, an example in real time, yeah? So how do we sustain these innovations? Remember, as a teacher, you are a facilitator and not a judge. This is particularly true in language learning. As I said before, you are a cheerleader for your students. You are there to help usher their journey, wherever their journey starts and wherever their journey ends with language. Again, I know. He still wants to talk. 1 second while I make... He's going a little crazy. So...
It does sound like it's going a little bit haywire.
It is going a little bit haywire. Thank you for recognizing. So, we're going to validate the voices instead of erasing them. Where when a student speaks, take a moment or two to tell them that you love the way they talk. I make this a point and a feature, especially with my underperformers, keeping in context that everyone's language journey is different. People take their own time, they have their own rhythm. But if somebody is falling behind in what the established curriculum is at my school, I take a moment to validate how they talk. I take a moment to let them know how much I appreciate having them in the classroom and that I recognize the effort they're making. And also, as I said before, a key takeaway, and to make sure that these innovations stay in place, is to prepare your students for intercultural communication. As I said before, exposing them to a variety of accents, dialects, and approaches to the language. So, again, correct less, validate more, innovate together. Because Because every accent is a story, and our job is to not erase it, but to help it be heard. And with that being said, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for the presenter? We have time for questions.
Hello, good morning, and
Good morning.
thank you. I was a little late for the conference, and
Sure.
I surely apologize to everyone. But still, I am really interested towards this topic, especially when you were saying like how to like give feedback in the classroom with the student. And I noticed that sometimes, yes, we have to like skip some mistakes that they make during the speaking week because we are more focused on like identifying how the message or like the meaning behind what they're trying to say. So we sometimes omit like interrupting the students so they can flow. But still, you sometimes find students that they say like, profe, pero es que usted no le corrige a uno cuando uno está hablando. Or there was this one student that was really angry because I was just trying to listen to him, and he was like speaking, but he would make these faces like he wasn't sure if he was saying it correctly or not. And well, I was trying to help, but I was mostly listening, like trying to actually listen. And then when he finished, he expressed with his emotion, like obviously showing that he was upset, that he was like feeling that I wasn't giving him the proper feedback on real time. But I was just trying to listen to him. But I managed the situation by just telling him like, listen, I mean, I wish I were as accurate as a computer to give this proper feedback of every word you say, but I'm not, you know, like, but I just made him realize that I was trying to listen to what he was saying more than the way he was saying it. And I think that's the way you can manage that. But I just wanted to mention that since it's so difficult for us to be in that position that they want us to correct them.
I totally feel that, and that is something that I have experienced as well in the classroom, particularly in Colombia. Students do have a tendency to feel like if you are not giving them very upfront correction, that you're not fulfilling your obligation to them. So first of all, in all of the peer-reviewed studies that have occurred, students do typically want corrective feedback immediately following whatever task they are completing. What I'm proposing, though, is that we don't correct everything. So as an example, if my lesson is about the present perfect, then any mistakes that fall out of that scope, such as past continuous, whatever it might be, I'm not focused on those. I am only there to focus on that, because even though students are like, come on, teacher, give me all of it, you can't give it all because that's information overload. And just like how you go to a doctor, you don't necessarily know what the doctor knows. You just have to kind of, take them and trust them. To an extent, we have to also do that with our students, where they have to trust us to guide them. And so, very important at the beginning of a school year, if you work in a public or a private school, is to establish rules and procedures. I make it very clear at the beginning of my class. We have the class rules, like don't talk when the teacher's talking, all of that. But then we have procedures, which is, here's how I grade you, here is how I correct you. And so they are aware, so they have more trust in the process. If you don't establish those procedures at the beginning of the school year, then you will get a lot of questions, because to them it's not clear. So those would be my two suggestions in that. Yes.
Okay, Chase, I have a question, and it is about standardized texts.
Oh gosh.
Because I know every accent is a story, but ultimately we are preparing students for taking those tests. But I think the tests don't accept that every accent is a story, or don't allow for variation of the accent, and sometimes you don't have enough points for speaking if your accent is different. So do you think that will at some point change?
Oh. So to address the question you just left off on, yes, I do think it's going to change. There was once upon a time, the DELE, Diploma de Español como Lengua Extranjera, only had Spanish accents in all of the audios, and that you were held to that standard. It wasn't until, if I'm not mistaken, and don't quote me on this, like 2015, that Instituto Cervantes began to incorporate Mexican and Chilean and other accents into the test to incorporate the broad scope of accents and dialects that are available. I do see English going that same way, but there's a great way to address both needs of our students. You have days where you're working on standardization, and then you have days when you're not working on standardization. I get 3 class hours per week with my students, and so typically we're focusing on something that's textbook oriented one day, working on something intercultural the next, and then we're doing standardization preparation on the third. So it's a nice conglomeration of various needs to give them a well-rounded education in English. Anybody else?
I actually have a question.
Sure.
It's very nice that as teachers we validate students' accents, but sometimes the other way around happens, that students want their teachers to be native. So they complain when their teacher's not a native speaker, or parents complain. You know, how can a non-native speaker be teaching English? So how can you kind of like flip that switch with students to validate the fact that their accent is okay, but also for them to validate the fact that your accent as a teacher is okay?
Oof, the $1 million question. If I had the answer to that one, I would be a rich man. Yeah, that's gonna take a lot of trial and error, and there's probably a PhD dissertation just devoted to that topic, honestly. Yeah, you got me speechless. Parents in Colombia do typically have the tendency of, if it's not a native speaker, then it's not as good, and that's very unfortunate. But yeah, how we address that is not something that I'm really well versed in. I'm so sorry.
Well, I think it can be addressed from the first part of what you said, treating English, the concept of English as a lingua franca. That in itself makes it deviate from any kind of classification, whether it's British or American. So it's educating on that concept, saying that English is a lingua franca.
No, 100% agree, but we're looking, that the root of the question, I understood correctly, is how do we create a paradigm shift in perception of an entire region or an entire culture, in this case Colombia. That's a little out of my scope, and that might be something better left to like a government agency or some kind of campaign, or maybe all of us rallying together. If my native brethren who are in the room right now can help validate their non-native teachers, that would also be a tremendous help. I work with some amazing, amazing English teachers who are from Colombia, and every chance I get, the students see me talking to them in the hallways in English, and so providing moments for our non-native colleagues to shine, so to speak, could be a method, but it's just not something that I've researched myself, so I don't want to like give a definitive answer.
Hi there. Do you listen to me? Okay, that's great. So I was over here.
Where? Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yes, here I am. It's actually a pretty interesting question, the one you just made in there, and I believe there is kind of a systematic issue going on, because especially Latin American countries, we have received all of these stereotypes coming from United States, for instance, where if you worked, for example, in a, let's say, call center scenario, you're gonna get this type of clients that would just.
Where are you from?
I'm from here, from Medellin.
So you're not American?
Yeah, true, exactly. And they would hang up on you just because your accent doesn't match that. So addressing English teaching here in Latin America also needs to understand all of the impact that these processes of colonization we have received, not only the historical ones from Spain and stuff, but also the cultural colonizations going on, that set this role of, or these models of perfection in terms of English that require to have this very specific accent. And parents in our society, they stick with those roles most of the times. So it's a matter of letting them know that there are multiple other scenarios. And even countries that historically have spoken English, they have way different accents. For example, Australia, right? Like Aussie accent is very interesting, or New Zealand, Scotland. Go to Scotland and ask them why don't they speak as an American, and let's see what they answer. So yeah, I believe Colombia is having quite interesting programs on that. There is a platform, in case you didn't know about that, which is called Eco2. It's pretty nice. It's of the Ministry of Education, and they want to basically create material for preschool, elementary school, and second graders, high school students, where they can interact with culture precisely from Colombia. So the examples are about capybaras or the Amazon River and so on and so forth. It's pretty interesting to take a look at that, and you can also get to listen to the accents of children from Colombia speaking in English, so it's pretty cool. So these type of approaches will enable us to get rid of these, let's say, role models that are mainly related with these colonization processes, I would say.
For sure. And just to confirm, ECHO2, as in ECO, the number 2?
ECHO2. Yeah, it's
Perfect.
a program. Actually, it stands for English for Colombia 2.0. That's a platform of Colombia Aprende. Go for it. It's completely free. They have pretty interesting curriculums for those that are working on public institutions. Is completely aligned with the standards of Guide 22, if I'm not wrong, which is the one of English here in Colombia. But all right.
Nice, like that. So to add to complement what you just said there, on the foreigner side, it's also an issue. In the state of Florida, I am a licensed teacher for grades 6 to 12 in science. Science. I am a scientist. But when I go and apply for jobs in Colombia, they go, oh, gringo, entonces inglés. I go, how about science? They go, no, English. You're teaching English. Deal with it. So I love it because I also love learning languages. My journey to learn Spanish was probably the highlight of my university experience. And so it's something that I was able to adapt to. And because I am not lazy, I'm not judging my other foreigners, but I went in and I made sure that I understood linguistic approaches and how to best facilitate my lessons. Also, I did reverse engineering, where I took what my Spanish professors did with me and I just did it the opposite direction. So the colonization that has happened historically and cultural colonization, as you may call it, today is a problem across everything. I would love to be able to share the expertise that I obtained through blood, sweat, and tears, and some diarrhea with my students, but English is what Colombia has called me to do, and I'm going to stay in Colombia, so I guess I'm an English teacher now. Sir.
Oh, sorry. Well, so picking up where he left, because actually what he just stated about contact centers ring the bell in my mind. And it's about the validation of the accent here. Turns out that back in the good old days when I was still working my ass off at a contact center.
God bless you.
Yeah, well, need to get that blessing. It was kind of, what do you call it? To put it soft, a rough path. And basically, I didn't get isolated merely because I could blend and merge with the culture. I could easily just identify accents and go with it. I mean, just flow with the whole thing. And that is, I mean, validation of the accent is paramount for us. in regards of the teaching dynamics. But how to better prepare our students for the cultural possible shock, that they are getting out there only and merely because of their accent. How am I going to validate something that is going to be crushed against the pavement later on once they get to see real life?
You prepare them for the crush. And by that I mean, when I speak in Spanish, it's very evident that I'm not from Colombia. And when I get on a flota and I'm going home, because I don't have a car, I'm Transmillennial is not my friend, but there I am using it. I tell the driver of the bus where I need to stop, and he does not understand me. And so literally, my first 2 years in Colombia, I used to have a little piece of paper in my wallet, and I was like, ladrillera, yo paro en ladrillera, and they're like, huh? And that is soul crushing, because I'm like, but I speak your language. On the other side, obviously I love Colombia. That's been here for as long as I have, and why I'm going to continue to be here. But I have had interactions where I get judged and criticized about how I speak and the words I use. So with my students, because I've had those experiences myself, just like you've had those experiences too, I let them know, if somebody doesn't respect you, if somebody doesn't understand you or doesn't like the way you speak, that's their problem. And then I add a little sassiness to it, and I'm like, most people who don't understand me don't have the education that I have. And most people that don't understand you don't have the education that you have. So then I have reinforced to my student that they are smart, they are capable, and that the problem isn't them, it's the other person. And that typically, yeah, can I get an amen? So that is how we can prepare them for the crush, because the crush is always there. You're going to meet accepting people, ignorant people, every kind of person. I can't be worried about the ignorance. I got to look at the light, you know?
Okay, we have to end now, but thank you, Chase Harrison. Again, a round of applause. Very, very insightful presentation. Thank you very much. Just to remind everyone that at 9:30 we have